Welcome to Painting. My name is Rhiannon Berry of Be Whimsy Art Loft. Thanks for spending time creating with me today. I encourage you to take your supplies or your kit if you received a kit for this session and find an outdoor area to paint in. The supplies in your kit should include almost everything you need. So that would be a canvas, paints, brushes, a stencil, carbon transfer paper, and then what you will need is a water cup, a pencil or a pen, something to put your paint out on and mix with, and a rag, as well as a Sharpie or a black marker. And if you don't have black, you can use green for this as well, or maybe a brown or a yellow. Those would work well too. Now you have brushes, and if you did get a kit, you probably have the same brushes I have, but if you're just joining in and following along, just get as close as you can. So a flat square brush, a nice round brush, any size will do. I think this one is about an 8 or a 9, but you might have a smaller canvas than me, so in that case go for a 5 maybe. And then a small square flat as well, or you can use an angle brush for this painting. And then having like a smaller, maybe 2 or 3 round is nice, just in case you want to get into the tight spots. And of course this Sharpie. I've included carbon paper, and then a stencil as well. I'm using a much larger sheet here than the canvas that are in the kits. This is canvas paper. Oh yes, and don't forget your water. I use the same water glass over and over again. And then paints, so Phthalo green, yellow green. If you don't have these, get as close as you can. Light magenta. And then I like a nice turquoise in this as well, but it's not necessary. You can get away with the 2 greens. So I put my colors out on my paper, my palette paper. You can have a plate, you can use a piece of cardboard, a kitchen plate. If you're using acrylic, it will come off. Now I wet my canvas first. If you have a spray bottle, you can use that. I just dipped my brush in water. And if at any time I'm going too quickly for you, please feel free to pause the video. So I'm just getting a little bit of water. It shouldn't have any drips, and it shouldn't wrinkle your papers, just a tiny bit. And I'm going to start by putting that yellow-green right into the middle of the canvas paper, and then I'm going to go with the other 2 colors just around the edges there, just putting dollops on my paper. And you do want to add like a nice amount on there. So at this point you're putting enough on there so that you can move it around and mix it together. I'm doing this up against a board, but you can do this just on a table. It might be a little bit easier. But yeah, so you just go around in a circle. Make sure you're going in a circle motion, and even if maybe you get to the edge of the paper, you're in the corners, make sure that you're going in that semicircle or quarter circle direction at all times. Now I've blended in my green, but I will bring the yellow green, but I will bring it back. I'll put a little bit extra on. So you got to get all the way around the edges, the whole piece of paper. And this should be calming and fun, so have some fun with the mixing of the paints. And I like to add a little bit more green here and there. Now mine is clipped on, so yeah, see, it's gonna move a little bit, so I'll probably tape it on in a little bit, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and finish off the background here. So you can see I'm adding the three different colors and just letting them blend together. I did put the lighter colors in the middle of the paper, and that's just going to create an effect later on. Now you might, if you have some white paint, you might find that that's something you want to use for mixing with the magenta. In the original, you can see the pink is pretty light. This one I think I'm going to do a little bit less white and make it pop a little bit more, so you can see the difference between when you add a little bit more white or not. But first things first, we do need to get your carbon paper. Now I'm doing it against the board again, so if you're doing it flat, you might not need tape, but tape is a good idea to keep it from moving around. And you want to put it right in the middle of your canvas or your paper, whatever you're using. And that way you're going to get the bulk of this stencil onto your canvas. Now I'm going to go ahead with a pen. You can use a pencil. But I'm going to use a pen today, and I'm going to do the majority of what's on the stencil, and I'll probably just take it off a little bit early so that those who didn't get a kit can I can give you some tips about how to draw it freehand. So you can see I'm going over every single line, inside and outside. You want to make sure you're not missing anything. So you can use a pencil crayon for this, you can use a red pen, anything that'll help you make sure you're not missing any lines is a great idea. So if you do have a kit, that's great. You likely picked it up from me or maybe one of my drop-off locations, or perhaps I delivered it to you. And this kit is part of the Nature Lovers series, so the Nature Artist series, and this is one of 3 painting stencils that were in the kit. You also received a 4th canvas, and that's for you to go out for a hike or to the park and take a picture or bring your supplies right there and paint something interesting that you find out in nature. This part is repetitive, but it's great because it gives you a chance to really be mindful and pay attention and bring some awareness to what you're doing at the present moment. And being mindful in a non-judgmental way. So if you make a little mistake, that doesn't matter here. What matters is you're taking some time to be creative today. Okay, I'm going to finish up a few more of these outlines, and then I'm going to take the paper off and give those who don't have a stencil a little bit of a tutorial on how to draw the lines and a little bit of guidance on tips and tricks for that. So I'm going to take my stencil off, careful with the tape. You don't want to damage your painting underneath. Okay, so we do want to make sure that we are looking and making sure that if any lines we didn't get for some reason, we're drawing them in. I'm going to use a pen, but you can use a pencil for this part because if you do make a mistake, you can erase it. Now, what you'll notice is that when you're drawing the inside part of the, I guess, petal, that it's rounded, and then the outside line of each petal it's bulbous, but it comes to a little bit of a point. Also, when hand drawing, just look at the picture for reference, and you'll see that it's almost like the Fibonacci sequence, you know, it goes around and around, and it gets bigger as you go out. So you start small. I started with sort of a little circle, and then there's 3 leaves, 4 leaves, 5 leaves, 6, and it gets larger and more as you go out, and the always underneath is in between 2 leaves. So you can look at the picture and try to copy, but keep those in mind too, that the inside line is a circle or an orb shape, and the outside is bulbous like the orb, but it has a tip. I'm just going to finish up a few more and bring it to the edges here. You might have to do the same thing. So even if you have this stencil, you might find you missed a few lines, or that you want to pull it closer to the edges of the paper. So this is a good chance just to take a look at the guide image and try to copy that as close as possible. You can't really see it, it's not really showing up even though I used pen, but that's okay. You'll see it when I start adding the pink, which I'm going to mix now. So I'm going to use this little flat brush. You put the magenta with a little bit of white, but that being said, you can leave the magenta, the light magenta, the color it is now. You can add a lot of white or a little bit of white. I'm just going to add a little bit less than I did in the original painting, so that it's a little bit more bright and it's more impactful on camera as I'm painting. Okay, so you start by just coloring in between the lines that you've drawn, and again, take this part slowly. It's meant to be repetitive and relaxing, and bring you to the present moment of what you're doing, creating something, and you'll see that it will really start to come together over time as you get the pink on there. It starts to really make sense. I will save the middle portion for the very last because I'll switch my brush. Now this is where you figure out which brush works best for you. I'm using a flat brush because I like to turn it sideways and get in the skinnier parts between the lines. You can use an angle brush if you have one. That'll help a lot. If you prefer to use the round brush so that you have a little bit more control over painting in between the lines, that's up to you. These brushes, although they have specific tools for specific jobs, every artist uses their tools differently. So whatever feels the best for you is really what you're looking for right now. And for me, I like this little flat brush. I'm used to painting in between lines with it. I prefer an angle brush as well sometimes for this type of work, but this seems to be working just fine. And then you can see I'm adding the pink on, however, I will need a second layer, so just keep that in mind. Get the first layer on, it'll dry, and then you will see which areas require more of your attention. So what that means is don't try to be perfect in this step. You'll have 2 more steps to really make this look great. So after this layer and it's going to dry, we'll add touch-ups, and then the last step with the Sharpie or your marker will really pull it all together, hide any imperfections, and it will look great. So I have my first layer on, and I'm going to go back in now. I'm choosing my round brush here, and I'm going to go ahead and put a second layer over top of everything. Again, I'm not being too careful about creating perfectly straight lines because I am going to use my Sharpie in just a little bit, and it will really even everything out. Going back to the pattern, so the inside of each leaf, I'm not sure if they're called leaves or not, but inside of each portion here, it's a rounded shape. So when you're doing your touch-ups, just make sure that if you have anything that's like a triangle on the inside, that it's rounded off. That'll create consistency between the leaves. And the outside, it's a little point, so if any of your outside lines aren't in a point, this is your opportunity to look for those and correct them. And you can see now, you do want to let it dry before you bring out your Sharpie. I've kind of sped up the process here, so don't try to catch up. This is a trick of editing. But once you've finished your second layer and it's dry, you can come in with a Sharpie like I'm doing now. Again, you want to look at your reference picture and draw every line. So you can start by outlining all the green. That will get all the inside lines, but you're going to have to pay special attention, take it very slowly, because it does appear to be very easy, but you want to make sure you're working from the inside out. And the reason for that is because when you're drawing the lines, you're drawing the outside and the inside. So the exact same lines you drew when you originally drew the pattern are the lines you're drawing now, only it might not be as clear because the pink has sort of joined together in a lot of areas, a lot of the connection points. So you can see that I'm bringing this black all the way down to the middle, and I'm going to work outwards. Don't work from the edges in, because you'll increase your chances of making a mistake with the black marker and perhaps bringing one of these lines too far in to an area it's not supposed to cross over. Keep that in mind as you're doing your black marker. Okay, so if you're doing this step, I'm doing it on a board again, but if you're doing this step, I recommend doing it flat. My marker, I'm having a little bit of trouble with my marker because I'm holding it up like this. I'll probably just take this off now and I'll do it on the table I have here. But yeah, so I just wanted to give you a little bit of an example of how to work outwards from the middle and just making sure that you're not bringing those black lines on top of areas where they shouldn't be. So just really follow your guide as you're going. And again, through the magic of video editing, I have finished all the black lines here, and you might need a little bit extra time to finish them all off, but you can see a little bit of the difference in the pink, especially now that it's dried. Both are beautiful, but I think next time I might even use yellow instead. So there are lots of different colors. There's purples and things like that in succulents too, a variation of purples. So this is a fun one to experiment with. And I did want to mention that gentle painting originally was designed for gathering in outdoor spaces and painting together in community gardens. Unfortunately, due to COVID restrictions, I was not able to do the original vision of doing that, so I did create these kits and these videos. However, if you do want to be part of an online social community, I do have an opportunity to express yourself creatively. It's called Creative Conversations Pen Pals Project, and you can sign up at www.bewhimsyartloft.ca. It is a group of creative people, writers, poets, painters, photographers, and we match everybody up with a partner for a 2-week period, and you exchange artworks in a call and response style. And we have Zoom meetings, and we meet online and exchange experiences. And if you would like to contact me or find out more about gentle painting or any of the activities that I offer through Be Whimsy Art Loft, please do contact me at artbyrhiannonberry@gmail.com. Have a great rest of your day.